Go. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. We're back. With loving kindness, what you might even want to do, you sit down, you're struggling, you're having a bad day. Happens all the time, right? Having a bad day. That's why that meditation space is so helpful. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to be kind to myself. Just going to pause, let it go. Today was lousy, and here's the neat thing is every day changes. Every day changes. So with loving kindness, it's a little bit of, and sometimes I even put my hand here, my chest, like I'm meditating, and then it'll be, today was really rough, you might say. What do I need to say to myself right now that would be kind? That's loving kindness. What do I need to do for myself? What's a kind thing I could do for myself today? Or tomorrow, whatever. And really think of something that can be simple. What's a kind thing that I can do for myself? And a lot of it is showing up on the cushion, sitting on, just having some pause, quiet, still time for yourself. It's a luxury these days on the planet. It's a luxury. We are racing around. We're busy. I've heard all the excuses why I can't come to your course, why I don't want to meditate, why I can't do the retreat, why I don't want to do I've heard all the excuses. And they are, you might also feel, they're more and more sophisticated now, the excuses, right? People have some really interesting ones, okay? So we're busy. I've heard it all. I've been there. I've had the excuses myself. So it doesn't take much. 10 minutes, you just allow yourself, you like it, you want to extend. You extend the 10 minutes. But a little bit, sometimes it's just, what do I need to do for myself that is kind? And, one of the things I've done at times is, and this is more, I don't think, because it's very hot in India most of the time, people don't take baths as much. But in cold cultures, cold climates, in the winter, it can be very soothing. It can even be medicinal. There was some doctors that said, we have this substance called Epsom salts, put it in the bathtub. It's very healing, where it draws out toxins. So sometimes if I'm having a bad time, a bad stretch, it's just, I forget. I was like, oh, I need to get in the bathtub, and just half an hour, 20 minutes, doesn't take, but it's like a relaxation of just soothing. So find what it is. Some people go to the gym. They want to exercise. They go out for a walk, get near nature, go to one of your parks, and you just take a moment. You're not with the phone in the park. Sorry. You're not with the phone. Be kind. That's not necessarily the kind thing you want to do, because we're on those devices all day. I'm in the park. I left my phone at home. You want to track your steps? You bring your phone, put it in your pocket. And now I'm going to look at the trees, notice the sunset, look at the birds. It gets you out of that ruminating mind and the me and the woe. But ask yourself, what do I need to do? And have some healthy kindness that you show to yourself. Figure out, have a little list of 3 that like, these are my things I want to really, I haven't done that in a while, so I need to do that. That's going to be kind for me to do. So just a few little quick techniques. Again, mindfulness, shared humanity, loving kindness. You can try like that. Some other things another thing I wanted to mention. Yeah, just finding the balance of checking my story when the mind is out of balance. So much, the world's swimming around, you're rushing around, you have all these things to do, all these pressures, all these stressors, right? And then, so having that little place for me to be calm, to be still for a moment, to just watch my mind, okay? I can check what stories I get going about the stressors and telling myself I don't have time. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. Like that. So, and check and be accurate with the stories. I do actually have time. These are just habits. There's habits of thinking that I always think this way. So what really I could create time. When I was saying about chanting the names of Manjushri, this is something His Holiness the Dalai Lama asked us to do to create the cause for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to return soon in a good situation, good rebirth, chanting the names of Manjushri. So you can read this prayer quickly if you'd like. I think I read it in like 45 minutes. So let's say you have an hour. let's say you decide I'm going to read a half an hour a day. So people go half an hour a day. They're not used to reading something like that. They might find it boring. It's got all the different types of manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom and other things, very auspicious, okay? But we waste a half an hour a day, don't we? We spin out with computer games and we're looking at YouTube videos and we're, constant like that. So it's very typical like that. So you can find that, and maybe when to be realistic, you want to start, then do 10 or 15 minutes of recite. Sometimes Lama Zopa Rinpoche would ask us to recite sutras, discourses of the Buddha. And some of them are very, lofty language, and you're kind of trying to figure out what is this sutra about. But even if you read 10 minutes a day, I noticed that when I would complete a whole reading, some of the readings could take a couple of hours, but when I complete a reading over a course of a week, I'd have some auspicious dream. So it must have some layer in the mind, it must do something to the mind. So just a little bit of that patterning our minds with virtuous mind states. That's what meditation really means in Tibetan. Gom is the word for meditation. Gom, G-O-M. This is a gompa, we might say, gompa. Okay, but it doesn't mean meditation hall. What it means is meditate means to familiarize, habituate my mind with what? Virtue, virtuous mind states, uplifting mind states, positive mind states. And those are mind states that make you happy. They make you blissful, they make you peaceful. Right? And we have that time. So again, but be realistic. People say in the beginning they want to meditate, get excited, and then they say to me, how long do you meditate every day? Doesn't matter how much I meditate. It's your mind. It has nothing to do with me. There's no competition here. Okay, so just figure out, I think I can do 10 minutes in the morning and like I said, I didn't know how to meditate. So I'd come home from work. I did meditate a little bit in the morning, 10 minutes, but I didn't know what I was doing, but I just sit there. Okay, then the body got used to sitting. So then this started to work out. Again, practice. So when I started meditating, I was much younger. So the knees were better, less arthritis in the knees, less, but I could barely sit for 10 minutes like this. My knees were screaming. But, just out of habit, the habit of putting my body in this position, you don't have to sit in this position though. Sit, he's got a good posture in a chair, sitting, and you had your feet before on the floor, flat on the floor. So, that's a good posture in a chair. So for me, just from this sitting, my body just goes in this position, very comfortable now. I can sit for much. So again, you can do the same thing with your mind. Mind gets used to, and then there you are in the face of some adversity, difficult person at work, this person you run into. I'm in the doctor's office, he might tell me that I have a difficult disease. My mind's balanced. I know, this is samsara. I have to die of something at some point, and I'm going to try to, and I'm focused. And as I'm going through my day, a little off balance here. Oh, well, what if I just take a moment and think of others going through this? Then suddenly balance comes in the mind. It's not just about me. Suddenly it's like, maybe I can help somebody else. And then you check your mind. And then at the end of the day, you come back to a little 10-minute sit maybe. Maybe some of you are doing longer, great. But come back and I check in. How did the day go? How did the day go? So I had a motivation in the morning, that I'd love to be on a path and try to balance my mind and, familiarize my mind with virtue or whatever you want to say. Put it in your own words. So I can be a Buddha, so I can reach full awakening, become fully enlightened. All means the same. But the reason we want to attain that is then I'm unlimited and benefiting all living beings. So, oh yeah, that was my motivation in the morning. I never thought about it again. But I tried. So here I am at the end of the day. Okay, let me think of, and so here's what you have to do at the end of the day. This is kindness to yourself, self-compassion. What we might do at the end of the day as a practitioner, some people do purification practices. That's great. You can slowly learn those to clean up whatever I messed up. Then I don't feel any guilt. I don't have any guilt carting around because I did what I could do. We all mess up during the day. So we have a way we clean. We have various practices. They can teach you here. Like that. Okay. But here's what happens is all we get focused on is everything we did wrong, right? A lot of focus on that. We're very clear about what we did wrong. So at the end of the day, the exercise is the first thing I have to think about is what I did right. What good thoughts I had today. Oh, I had my motivation in the morning. I didn't do anything else, but I had the motivation. Well, that's good. And do you ever then one inhalation, one exhalation? I'm okay. I'm not an egomaniac. You're not doing it in that sense, but I'm just like, I'm okay. I tried today. Some days it doesn't go well. All right, I tried. And no, tomorrow is going to be different. It always is. So I don't have to hold on so tightly to today, what didn't go right. The first thing you have to think about is what went well? What went well? You know, I bought somebody a coffee. That was nice. It's not like I bought somebody a coffee, I'm great. No, I bought somebody a coffee. I'm happy with that. Took somebody out to dinner. Nice. I let somebody else take the taxi. They really needed it. I wanted to go home, but okay. Like little things. We do so many good. I bought somebody flowers today. Great. Gave somebody chocolate. Nice. Yeah. So first have a little reflection, inhalation, exhalation. I'm okay. I'm good enough, by the way. I'm good enough. Yeah, I know I'm trying to be a Buddha, but right now I'm okay. Okay. So first you think about that. Then what didn't go so well? But can I also just see it in a balanced way? Messed up some things today. I said something, this opened and something came out that wasn't so great. And when I look at it, I was a little tired. I was a little frustrated with this person. They're always doing that. They're always like that. And I just said the wrong thing. All right. Not a big deal. And if it is a bigger deal, you can always apologize. You can do more purification practices. Let it go. Make sense? Possible? Any questions before we move on? I'm just looking in the... I have all the excuses why they haven't turned their cameras on. I'm so sorry to somebody. Okay. No worries. We're all okay. Okay. So what I'd like to do is, this was just a short talk on self-compassion techniques. I know it's a whole other course we can go into. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and then I want to talk about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, if that's okay. But another thing to think about is, in this somewhat fragmented world right now and somewhat overwhelming at times and confusing, it's also glorious. So meaning we make duality because our mind suffers from contamination because we're ordinary beings. So we're not really interacting with our reality accurately because we don't understand our reality accurately. And things don't really exist the way they appear to us. And we get hooked by the appearance, which is simply due to our fundamental ignorance. We get hooked by that appearance, and then we invest in the appearance, we believe in the appearance, we trust it. And the appearance is wrong. We have a misknowing of the appearance of how things really exist. And that creates all of our suffering, okay? So we just understand as ordinary human beings, this is what we experience, and you can change that in your mind. Everyone in this room, everyone online, you can absolutely change that in your mind and have a direct perception of emptiness, the nature of reality. Penetrate that, and everything changes. But for now, we move along and we try to set up conditions for that happening. And that's our spiritual practice in this tradition, for the most part, and to reach enlightenment like that. So you want to understand as you go along, as a result of the duality, there's a groundlessness. And here's what I just want to say is based on this groundlessness, meaning there's going to be fracture in the world, there's going to be confusion in the world, pain, suffering, wonderful things, beautiful things, it's all there. So make sure every day, can you experience and go out and see and really celebrate something wonderful and beautiful. It's always there around you. Should you choose to see it. I couldn't believe tonight coming over here from where my host's house, we were in a taxi, And, Delhi, the pollution, I just came from gorgeous Himalayan mountains and like that. They even have, it wasn't clear up there. The pollution wasn't clear in Dharamsala. It was the first time I was kind of like November. I was like, it's not those crystal clear days they used to have. And so, so this is the nature. But here we come back to Delhi. Okay. So there is, I forget, is the moon waning now? We had a full moon, and is it going down? Anyway, it's coming up, I think just a sliver. And suddenly I look up and there's a sliver of the moon, Delhi. And I was like, and, I like to see the moon, and beautiful little, just, rising or just beautiful like that. So there's these things all around. There's beautiful flowers right now out in Delhi. Like you have that kind of temperate climate. So in the winter, incredible things all around. So have some appreciation. Do you see it? I was on a walk with someone the other day, and I, it's beautiful in the mountains. And can you get up to the mountains once in a while? Like get out to some other, at least go to the parks here in Delhi if you can. But I was going on a walk with someone the other day, and I like trees and flowers and birds and things like that. I like nature, and I'm just as fine in a city. But we were walking, and I was just noticing, and I'd stop every once in a while and be like, look at this tree. Like, this is so, and they weren't all that focused on and I go, look at the incredible flowers. And so, celebrate a little bit of that. Give your mind that break of where you really see it. And whatever it is for you, it may not be the trees and the flowers and the plants, but something where you see some act of kindness, somebody showing somebody else. Like, oh, look, he just walked out of the restaurant and gave the person on the street their food, or bought them food, or, there's so many ways you can see that. Then we see the other side. Then there's the other side, where stuff is struggling, and know that it's impermanent. It's changing. It's changing. So here's a kindness you do for yourself. You wake up in the morning, you start your day, whatever's going on, however you do that, right? But we're aware some days it doesn't go well, right? Do you ever have those days you hit your knee on the table, you spilled your coffee, something's not going right. The clothes you thought were going to be clean, then you dropped it in the puddle in the thing, and sometimes like 2 or 3 things happen in the morning. So here's your self-compassion thing. Have your eyes open to that. Be careful that day. Be careful that morning, because things are a little bit sideways. So then use your wisdom. That is not the day that I am then going to have that difficult conversation with that person in my life that I need to have with them. I'm not going to do it on that day. It's not smart to do it on that day. I'm not fully there. And those are the days you need to take care of yourself a little bit more. Again, back to my loving kindness. So what do I need to do right now for myself? And I've had mornings like that and then if I have to go outside, I'm careful how I go outside. Careful getting the bus or getting the taxi or taking the train, or, just because I've already had a few little mini accidents in the morning. Okay. But then you have other days, spacious, as we'd say in the United States, all the engines are firing in the right way. Like everything's going well. Then I'm going to tackle the more difficult project that day. Because I feel good. I'm alert. I'm awake. Things are going really well right now. My brother used to say to me, that's the day you want to play the lottery. That's the day you want to put your money down on the, so we know, and you learn about yourself. So why engage in something really challenging when I'm like half awake and I didn't sleep well last night and I don't feel well and I got a crank in my neck? And why do it on that day? If you can avoid it, choose another day, because another day will be different. Make sense? Everybody with me online? You okay? So I want to talk about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, whose birthday we celebrate today, December 3rd. Just a few experiences I've had, and I would open up to our audience as well. If people have other stories, even something they've heard about that, a story from another student that Rinpoche, I heard this from another student. Let me just make sure. Or Nick, are you checking if anybody's asking questions online or? Okay, great. Thank you. There's 2 stories I have to talk about. my parents dying, and Rinpoche was there for both of my parents. It's quite extraordinary. And how I feel like if you can find an appropriate teacher, and I would really say in this tradition, like a guru, a spiritual guru, and it's very nice in India, you can say the word guru and people don't get really scared and nervous. And a spiritual teacher is what guru is about, like that. So I was fortunate to meet Lama Zopa Rinpoche before I even knew the word guru, or that I wasn't looking for a spiritual teacher. Was able to meet him in a first class that I did, a 10-day class at Kopan Monastery many years ago. And I wasn't going to be a Buddhist. I wasn't interested in that. I was just interested in learning about Buddhism. It's very open, and I wasn't looking for a teacher. I was very happy with my life, directing my life in my own way. I had a job and a career, and everything was going well. And I took a trip to Asia, and very fortunately, and then was able to meet Rinpoche at the end of this course. So many years later, and then finally getting into Buddhism, deciding to become a Buddhist, and then serving Rinpoche. One thing you can do for your teachers, offer service to them. So I decided to let go of my career, and I was spending more time at centers and meditating and doing retreats. And then Rinpoche asked me to run one of the retreat centers in the States. And then when you do a lot of service for them, you can form a closer relationship with the guru. And I had time to check in with Rinpoche. I saw Rinpoche a lot. He came to our center many times to lead retreats and teach, and I had a lot of access. And so as a result of that relationship, I became very close to him, like many other students, not just me, but many students, and many who've been at this much longer than me. And then when first my mother was dying, and this was 2010, and I was stationed at a center in the Northeast of the United States, running the center, and Rinpoche came to the center to lead a week's retreat. And at the end of the retreat, which was in the far northeast of the States, Rinpoche was driving all the way down to the southern part of the country on the East Coast to lead another retreat for us. And I was going to attend that retreat. And as they were driving, my mother had been hospitalized in a coma for many months already. And they were going to be going near the hospital, driving down. So I requested that to Rinpoche's attendant, would there be any chance that Rinpoche could just stop into the hospital, even 10 minutes would have been a dream. But I had no expectation that it would be possible, because with Rinpoche, you never know. And if the karma wasn't there for my mother, it was okay. So anyway, I made a request a couple days before, and then Rinpoche had some other stops. And then I got alerted early in that morning that Rinpoche would come, but it might be later in the day, later in the night. And I was like, great. And I told my brother and my father, and they wanted to be there in the hospital room. And fortunately, she had her own room because she had an infection. So sometimes some negative thing, having this infection, she had to be isolated in this room, but we could go into the room. You just had to put gowns on. And so she was in her own room, not very conscious. But anyway, so then Rinpoche showed up at 11 o'clock at night and stayed for 3 hours and did every practice you can do for sick people that he wanted to do. And the three of us, my brother, father, and I were there. And Rinpoche brought in, he had a suitcase at the time, like a roll bag of relics, holy things he had collected for years of holy beings on the planet, including the Buddha. He had some sort of blood sample that they said was from Shakyamuni Buddha. So these incredible relics and these beautiful crystal glass reliquaries of all different sizes. And they were in this beautiful suitcase so that they wouldn't break. They were only special cases. And so he decided, the van was there, his van that he was, and I remember he said, take the suitcase. So take the suitcase into the hospital. So as a result of my mother's misfortune, right, but the grace of this holy being, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all the people in the hospital got indirectly blessed with these relics coming into the hospital, including any of the workers there. But all these sick people, whether they actually came in contact with a relic on their crown or got this blessing, was my belief at the time. So Rinpoche brings in the suitcase, and the fortunate thing is, the reason they came at 11 o'clock at night, Lama Zopa Rinpoche knows the optimum time to get there, I have no question. And they came at 11 o'clock at night because nobody's in the hospital at 11 o'clock at night. You know, there's some care workers there, of course, the nursing staff, but there's no visitors. There's no x-ray technicians. There's no doctors on call, no doctors doing rounds. So it's peaceful and quiet in the hospital. She had her own room, and then right down the hall from her room was a lounge, a little lounge, where visitors could wait and have something to eat. And, you know, so what I did is I got snacks that I brought in, and then drinks, and I had thermoses of tea and hot water and things. And then I parked everything in the lounge, and then Rinpoche could bring the relics into the lounge and take out what he wanted for my mother. And he had some little pills he put in her mouth, and he had some things so we had this 3 hours, and then we sat in the lounge with my brother and father. And then my brother had never met Rinpoche, so he got to meet Rinpoche, and my brother has a very good sense of humor, as did Rinpoche. And then Rinpoche took out one of the relics, and my brother couldn't really get his mind around the relics. Like, what are these things? These little, you know, and this is a tooth piece of somebody, and this is a hair of something. Like, because, you know, the religion we were raised in, we didn't really have relics as saints. Where Christians have relics as saints, you can visit the bone, you know, and we didn't really have that in our religion. So I see, and my brother's very tall, and Rinpoche was much shorter. And Rinpoche's holding this little thing. It was this big. And I had to translate a little bit because Rinpoche spoke perfect English, but, you know, my brother wasn't attuned to the accent. So Rinpoche is saying, and this is a blood sample, Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, from the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, blood sample. And my brother is looking at it, and I said, it's a blood sample from the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, I said. Rinpoche said, 2,600 years ago, the Buddha. Okay, so my brother's reaching over, and he looks, and he looks at the sample, and he looks at Rinpoche, and he looks back at the sample, and he looks back at Rinpoche, and then Rinpoche says again, from the Buddha, 2,600 years ago. And then my brother looks at Rinpoche, and he says, and you've had it ever since? Okay. And then Rinpoche, that was it, and they were bonded from that moment on. They were Rinpoche, you know, and that was it. They totally won my brother over. My brother, to this day, was always asking about Rinpoche, you know, and my father had met Rinpoche many times, but to have this man come, my mother had met him as well when she was better, to have him come and spend 3 hours in the hospital, which the religious leader from my parents' religion barely saw her. And my father commented and said, you know, he never came. But 3 hours, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, standing by her bedside for 3 hours, doing these pujas, yelling in her ear, and you know, unbelievable. And then, so when we started the puja, I'm on one side of her bed, Rinpoche's on there, my brother and father are seated there, and they stayed on. And then what happens in hospitals is they might have the priest come to do last rites or whatever, but they might not have a lot of time, and the hospital may say, okay, you have 10 minutes, or so Rinpoche started, you know, 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden he looks across at me, and he used to make the cutest expression, and Rinpoche said to me, how much time do I have? How long do I have? He said, how long do I have? And then Rinpoche looked at me and he said, how long do I have? You know, and no, he would make this expression, like, you know, like, how long do we have? And then I said, I don't, because I'd gone to the nurse's station very shortly before the meeting, because I didn't want it to be canceled. I didn't want to be in the morning where they go, we have to get the ethics committee to, you know. So 10:30 at night, they were arriving at 11. I was alerted, they're coming at 11. 10:30 at night, I went up to the nurse's station on my mother's floor and said, is it all right? Our Buddhist priest is coming for my mother. Would that be, because I saw all the priests come, the Catholic priests could come in anytime, no problem. So Buddhist priest, so the nurses were, oh, of course, sure. Is that okay? He's going to be here in about a half an hour. Any problem? Oh, no. You know, nobody, what do they care? Nobody's there. So they were very gracious, and there was nobody ever came in the room for 3 hours. Nobody came in, check anything. It's just totally unlimited. I'm sure Rinpoche kind of controlled and protected the whole scene. I could see the whole thing. So it was amazing. And then 3 hours later, and then they left, and just amazing. And when the guru comes to see your aging, dying parent, basically, I sat there every day as much as I could be there because I was running the center, but every time I came with my father, all day we'd sit in the hospital and I do all these prayers for her and all these things. But when the guru comes, your mind can rest. Like, like nothing better can happen like that. That's the best for her. So then when my father was dying, some years later, my father died about 5.5 years ago, and in the United States, and he had cancer, and the cancer spread incredibly all over, and he had no pain. So I felt like that was a blessing from Rinpoche. And then when he was a few days before he died, Rinpoche was in Latvia teaching, and the teachings were streamed live. And I had an announcement I would get on this WhatsApp group. And those of us that signed up, you could get an announcement anytime this live stream started. So it would say Lama Zopa Rinpoche teaching live, and I could just push the button and Rinpoche would appear live in the teaching, whatever it was doing. So I watched a lot of teachings that way when I couldn't be there in person. So my father's in his room, and my sister had flown in. She lives in England. She had flown to the United States. So as a result, I was driving over to my dad's place every day, and in his small apartment. And I was driving over every day with my sister. She didn't drive much in the States anymore. So she was kind of with me all day long, And with my mom, she was quite happy when I did some of the Buddhist prayers, and she'd just sit there. But somehow with my father, some years later, she just didn't want me to do it. I don't know what was going on, but she just didn't like it. And normally if I was there with my father, he was okay with it. So I would just all day be doing my practice and like that. So she's with me all day, and it's a little hard because I can't really do these practices to sit there. And then she gets a phone call. She goes out in the hallway. It's just me and my dad. And he was lucid right to the end. Like at times he'd doze, he'd sleep, and he'd wake up, and he was awake, and I was talking to him. And I get this announcement, Rinpoche's live streaming starting. So I said, "Oh, Dad," I said, "Lama Zopa's teaching in Latvia right now." And my father immediately, all he'd have to hear is Lama Zopa, and he'd always say, "Oh, how's Lama Zopa?" Because he was so interested, how's Lama? And he knew he had manifested this stroke, and he was always asking me how his health is and where is he now. And so I said, "He's in Latvia teaching." And I said, "Do you mind if I put it on?" And he said, "Oh no, put it on. So I put it on, I turned it up, and I was a little worried my sister's going to come in the room. And I turned it up and I said, "Dad, why don't we just listen to this?" And I showed him a little bit. It was on my phone, so it was small. And I said, "Look, if you want to watch, I'll hold it up and just listen, and whatever you take in. If you don't understand, I'll translate some things if you can't understand what." And he said, "Yeah, put it on. Okay. So he's lying in bed, very peaceful. And as soon as I put it on, Rinpoche stops the teaching. And Rinpoche says, I need to stop, and I need to give the lung, and lung is an oral transmission. So he's going to recite a lung very quickly for us to get that imprint in our minds. Holy mantra, sacred saying. And he says, I need to give the lung nam gel lung right now. I need to do it right now for people who have cancer, for people who are dying, for old people. He goes, I need to do this right now. And then he said, this other lung and this other lung, and I need to do these prayers right now. So 20 minutes he rolls on these mantras. So I said, Dad, I said, this is for you. I said, Rinpoche knows you're here. This is for you. I'm going to turn it up. Can I put it on your pillow? He goes, yeah. And I said, just listen. I said, we won't understand. Just listen to let it go in. Very peaceful. I put it on his pillow. 20 minutes, Rinpoche goes. 20 minutes. All the lungs, long lung, short lung, this mantra, that mantra, all these different things. Then he dedicates. 20 minutes goes by, dedicates. Nice dedication at the end. Finishes the dedication. My sister walks back in the room. That's the grace of the Guru. That's Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So and he does that not just for me, okay? All beings, simultaneously, everywhere, all the time. So I had the good fortune many years ago. Rinpoche didn't have a proper base where he was living. Certainly, a lot of time, November course, Kopan Monastery, he'd come and show up for 2 to 4 weeks and teach. But at one point, he had a house in California that finally was purchased, a number of students, very kind students, to give Rinpoche some place to be for part of the year. And he was working on getting a US passport, got his green card. He needed to be in the States about 6 months a year for some time. So this house was wonderful. And there was 4 active centers in California around this house, Buddhist centers of his. So he would teach, had lots of things to teach, and he could come back to the house. He could do retreat at the house. I think the house is being sold now. Unfortunately, it was all dismantled. It was like a museum. It was like a Buddhist museum. It was an amazing place. And I got to spend a lot of time with Rinpoche there. And so, wait, why was I telling this story about the house? Thinking from my father. Oh, I just lost that thought. Let me get that thought back. Okay. So I was just thinking of all the practices that Rinpoche did in the house, and the house is a reflection of that enlightened consciousness, and some very funny scenes happening in the house of just getting to spend time. Oh, so before the house, I remembered, Rinpoche would travel to all the different centers and just be hosted, but all the different centers have different accommodation. And he travels with Venerable Roger's main attendant, who runs our organization now. And then he slowly had some other monk attendants. And it became very challenging for the centers to host them for like a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It was a lot. So this house was just, they could come back, relax. They knew, and they had people there helping, and monks and nuns and things like that. So Rinpoche would come back to the house, and it was very helpful. And so in the meantime, we had a center in San Francisco in a nun's home, and I lived there with her, helping the center for 3 years. And Rinpoche came in twice to that house and stayed for 10 days. And it was a good setting, and nobody knew he was there, and we could, so what I remember was going back, we took turns. There were only 5 of us living in the house. But I realized at that point I had heard Rinpoche never slept. And then I witnessed it, that he never slept, because we had to do rounds in the house. I couldn't stay up all night. The 5 people in the house couldn't stay up all night. We couldn't keep up. So what we did is somebody went to bed at 3 and they were on till 3. And then somebody else would wake up and be on from 3 to 6. And then something else would happen. At 6 o'clock, somebody else would wake up and go, okay, why don't you take a few hours, and I'm on. And Rinpoche was up the entire time for days, never slept. I mean, I really witnessed that, because I remember I woke up 3 hours later, went up, and Rinpoche was still awake. So at one point you go in his room, there were times he didn't speak at all, like he's doing his practice, but in meditation, and sometimes he'd hand you a note. And so what I noticed is one time he handed the note. I'm taking the note, and I'm, how just somebody's passing you a note. And as I'm taking the note, Rinpoche doesn't let go of it. And first he's looking at me, doesn't let go of the note. And then suddenly he's like, pulls the note back, and then he's gone in meditation, like another 10 minutes. So it felt like he'd go back to check all over the all world systems of who needs help. Suddenly somebody needed something. So, Rinpoche couldn't be in this realm with us. Like he needed to kind of go back to that realm. That's how it felt to me. And then suddenly, like 10 minutes later, he'd be back, and he'd say something to you. So just this vast consciousness that I would say we can also develop. I mean, he was just that inspiration, that example of that perfect being that we can also aspire to being. And he gave us all the instructions, just like Shakyamuni Buddha, all the instructions you need to get enlightened. There's no excuses. So it was kind of a little unbalancing for me when Rinpoche passed suddenly. It was unexpected, a year and a half ago in Nepal. And when I got the message, for most of us, we were really in shock. I think it was really a startling thing that happened. And obviously an incredible teaching like the Buddha gave on impermanence, because Rinpoche's been teaching us this all the time. Death can come at any time. But what was a little bit hard at first was after the initial shock, the first few weeks, when you start talking to other students. And as a teacher, I started to get calls from people, emails from people, WhatsApp messages from people, and students that had been studying Buddhism, students of Rinpoche's for 10, 15, 20 years, so maybe not as long as me, but still practitioners who had gotten practices from Rinpoche to do, personal practices. And they wanted, over the years, they wanted me to help review the personal practices with them so they knew how to do it properly. And they're saying to me, what do we do now? Like, it was a mystery. What do we do now? Like, what are we supposed to do? And I went, what do you mean? What do we do? And they go, what are we going to do? What, like, you know, like the boat has no rudder anymore. And I went, well, what about your practices the Rinpoche gave you to do? Like, and all the teachings he gave. In the pandemic, there were videos every day almost of all this great stuff was going on. So it's like, what we need to do is we need to follow the advice that he's given us. If he gave you advice, do the practices, watch the teachings, put the teachings into practice, you know, and then, and also the things His Holiness has recently advised us. That's what we want to do. That's what we need to do, right? I mean, it's pretty simple like that. So I think it's helpful to go back, read some of Rinpoche's books, watch the videos. They're so inspiring. If part of it is boring, then skip ahead, go to another section and watch. Watch 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. They're all online, easily accessible, beautiful videos, funny videos. At Kopo Monastery, he's sitting on a bed filled with stuffed animals. It was endearing. It was so comfortable for us for the pandemic because people were freaking out in the pandemic. People were locked down, quarantined, not sure if this thing was going to kill everybody. Nobody knew it when it started. We didn't know. I mean, in the United States, they were hoarding toilet paper. Your culture must have thought that was hysterical, hoarding toilet paper, or just think, you know, people were doing weird things. Some of it was very moving of how people were supporting healthcare workers and other people, but we didn't really know. So Rinpoche, beautiful. He just pops on with these professionally made videos from his crew, wonderful, but these beautiful teachings of all kinds of different topics and subjects to support us and to inspire us and to keep us going. So that's the real holy Vajra Mahayana Guru. You know, we're so fortunate to have even 1 second of time with him, even one video of his like that. So sorry, I've gone on for quite a while, but maybe other people want to share some stories that we can put the camera on them as well. So I know some of you have stories. I know Joy has been around. She knew Rinpoche, had many meetings with Rinpoche, and Venerable Tekchog might have something you want to share. Let me just turn this, and there we go. Be nice to hear some other stories. Thank you. Yeah, Venerable Tekchog is right there. Great.
Yeah, I met Rinpoche quite late, so I didn't have so much contact with him, but there are two things. So one teaching in Italy I got. At this time I was already a monk, but I felt somehow not really happy somehow. And then he started the teaching and he was so wrathful. He was saying, oh, you have so much problems and you know so much about practice. Why do you have so much problems and see so much negativities? And it was like hitting with a hammer on my head, no? And saying, what are you doing? No? So you can be happy. No? You are a monk. You met the Dharma and everything is there. No? And still you are unhappy, no? Or not satisfied. So this was really, yeah, like a teaching for myself, directly to myself. Of course, it was not, no? But it was a huge crowd. But I connected personally to this. And the other thing is when I came to Nalanda in the south of France, where I live, especially the first years, I really was so thankful for Rinpoche's effort that he made possible this type of place and also all the study programs. I really was feeling like, yeah, there was a lot of gratefulness within me, and I could, even when I climbed up some stairs or sitting in a gompa, I really could feel this is because of him. This is because of him. Otherwise, I couldn't. So I was really grateful for this.
Mm.
No?
Very nice. And I was thinking what Venerable Tekchog was just saying was also that when he said, I thought that the teaching was like for me, so many people I know had, you'd be in a bigger teaching, many, filled, and people would walk out and go, sometimes I'd feel this way. I was like, wow, I'm really glad everyone could attend my own personal teaching because that was for me. And then people would hear different things, the Rinpoche would say. So the quality of an enlightened being or a highly realized being is they have that quality. So whatever they're saying, and you're actually hearing the same words about the same topic, but everybody takes in the grace of whatever they need. Sometimes it would be like, oh, that's just what I heard. And then I'd hear somebody else comment on something else that I didn't actually hear, but I heard another thing that I needed to hear. So it's just so brilliant how he could do that. It's really amazing. And then I just remembered, so many memories of teaching me about bodhicitta. And so we were in San Francisco during this period of the 2 10-day stays at different times. And then it was a holiday, and then Rinpoche said, let's go out for lunch or something. So we went to an Indian restaurant in San Francisco where we were staying. There were 5 or 6 of us. We went to this Indian restaurant, and we sat down, but the manager that came over, I don't think he was the owner of the restaurant, but he was running the restaurant, very nice man. And he came over to our table, but he clearly recognized who Rinpoche was. He didn't know Rinpoche per se, but he's like, this is a holy being. Like, he was so respectful. And in America, that's not really what's happening there necessarily when you see people dressed like this. Sometimes they stare at you and they're not sure if it's safe, and, are they going to indoctrinate me, and like, what's going on there? But this man totally got it and was just, seeing a holy being, and was so respectful, just right. So we passed out the menus, we ordered, and then the menus he ordered, and he was so happy. This man was so joyous. So in the kitchen, and he put the order in. And then what happened is he came back over and was kind of hovering near Rinpoche at the table because he was so excited that this was like Guruji had come. I mean, it was really, you could see his, and so he was kind of near Rinpoche. But when once you sit down in an American restaurant, and the same thing in Delhi, you sit down and you order, and you don't want the wait person kind of hanging there. You're having your conversation. And so I could see a couple people at our table, and it was the people in the house, but then Rinpoche invited a few other people to join us for lunch from the area. And I could see some of them got annoyed and like looked up at the man. One person was sitting near Rinpoche and like turned and saw the man and said, yes, like, do you need something? Like, we're having lunch now. Can you go away? Like, with kind of, he didn't say that, but with that attitude of like, and the man was just smiling, and then Rinpoche turned and just gave all this attention to the man. Like, because sentient being, like, for Rinpoche, there was nothing more precious than this man. He just mirrored it right back to the man. And I was at the other end of the table, and I saw this. And for me, I could be so selfish at the time. I felt like such a kind of cretin, kind of low level. And when I saw this, it was like a huge lesson for me of like, that's how we have to treat people. Because, and Rinpoche goes through this teaching a lot. He was doing this more recently, that Buddhas come from sentient beings. Buddhas come from sentient beings. So he was saying, in order to be a Buddha, you first have to be a bodhisattva, the high-level Buddhist saint. You have to be a bodhisattva. So in order to become a bodhisattva, you need sentient beings to practice, because the whole premise of being a bodhisattva is to cherish others more than myself. So you can't become the Buddha without sentient beings that help. So Buddhas depend on sentient beings. So suddenly to see him with this person and how he just put all this attention on them, it's a huge lesson for my mind, because we never do that. It's all about me. What do I need? We're having lunch now. And so many examples I had of Rinpoche doing something that would just blow your mind. You just be like, wow. Yeah, over and over. So many different, and so many students have stories of, so incredible stories about different things with Rinpoche. Rinpoche reading their mind, or Rinpoche knowing, exactly. He's like, how did Rinpoche know that? He, many beautiful stories. Other people, anybody online? Stories you'd like to share, or stories you've heard about Rinpoche? Or Nico, please. I don't know if this is focused right.
So yeah, I have so many stories about Rinpoche, so it's difficult to choose one. And many people here already heard many of the stories, so I'm trying to think of stories maybe you have not heard. And yeah, in relation to what Venerable Tekchok was saying, there was once a teaching also in Italy where Rinpoche was addressing the Sangha, the ordained monks and nuns. And I was not a monk that time. And after the teaching, I just looked for it now, I received this email from Holly, the secretary of
Just
Rinpoche.
now you got a message.
No,
before.
like just after that teaching.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
And Holly writes, Rinpoche said the teaching he gave today this morning, this was also for you in reply to you. So Rinpoche said, good, you study and listen to it time to time, and you can also get a transcript of it and so forth. And yeah, the advice was, of course, outstanding. But the story I was thinking to share today was the very first time I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I was not a Buddhist back then, and I just had done a 10 days introduction course to Buddhism in Dharamshala. And then I went to Kopan, and Rinpoche was coming from Singapore. So we were all, waiting for him in a line to offer a kata to welcome Rinpoche back to Kopan. And I was standing with one of my friends, and Rinpoche came and blessed all of us like this on the head. And when Rinpoche did that to me, I felt like I was about to faint. I had to sit down. And then my friend, she was crying like there was no tomorrow. And I asked her, what happened? Why are you crying? And she said, Rinpoche looked at me in a way nobody ever had looked at me, because she was a bit of a mischievous girl. and she said, without any judgment and full of love. And nobody ever looked at me in this way. Mm. Then Rinpoche settled down, and in the evening, he came out and did some circumambulations around the stupas of Geshe Lama Konshok and Ken Rinpoche at Kopan. And a small group of us were following him. And suddenly Rinpoche pretended he didn't know we were behind him and turned around and did, oh! And he started giving a whole 1 hour Lamrim teaching to all of us, and especially how to circumambulate stupas. This was my first interaction with Rinpoche. And Rinpoche is standing, and I'm sitting at his feet, like literally at his feet. And Rinpoche says, one of the mantras you can recite while going around the stupa is the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra, Om Mune Muna, Om Mune Mune, Mahamuna Yeswa. This was, and then he said, right? This was the only mantra I knew back then. So right from the beginning, Rinpoche showed me that he clearly knew my mind.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Joyaji, you want to share something?
I'm not sure. Actually, we went to Nepal in 79, and my husband went on some teaching project in the university. But on the last day when we met the sponsors, somebody said, go to Kopan. So we said, what? It turned out that when we arrived, we actually stayed in a hotel in Bodha, the Taragaon hotel. It's gone now. And then we were looking for a house, and the person who was the manager, she said, I have a house. So I thought, oh shit, now we'll have to, look at this house. We don't want to stay here. But it was perfect. And it was right on the road to Kopan, you see. And we would just walk up or drive up. And we tried very hard to meet Lama Yeshe because he was there. And they wouldn't let us meet him. It was John Schwartz who was running a course. And then at 3 times we tried to meet, and said, oh no, they won't let you meet him. So we complained about this to I don't know if you knew Jan Willis. She wrote that, she
Yeah,
did the
she's a good
translation
friend of
of
mine. Yeah.
Asanga's Bodhisattva Bhumi. So she said, they will never let you meet him. Come, I'll take you. So you're just Indians, you have your own traditions. And why don't you know about Buddhism anyway? It was like very strange. We felt very excluded. So she said, come. And she actually took our hands and marched us up the stairs, you see. And then we met Lama Yeshe. But in front of Lama Yeshe, Rinpoche was just a student. Lama Yeshe and my husband got on like a house on fire, actually. It was hilarious. I couldn't understand what was happening, He was very delighted. But Rinpoche was always with his, eyes on the floor or like under the table or something. And then he'd take away our dirty cups. And then he'd put a cushion under my feet or something like, my guru's guests. He behaved like that. He taught us how you behave in the presence of your own guru, Your guru's guests are like gods, you see. He did that. And then later, it was very interesting. I had many experiences with Lama Yeshe, just like, I can't say what kind of experience they were. They were not verbal or anything like that. It was like things hitting you later on. And it was like I was so dense that I couldn't understand what's happening when it's happening. It's only after a little while, then you get zapped. That this is what happened, So once a friend of mine, a Dutch friend, her husband was leaving her for some woman in a very nasty way. So I said, leave him. If he's doing that, so what if he's your husband? Just leave him. But she was very affected. And I never empathized with that. And I was behaving in that way. Just make your own decision and split. But she really was suffering. So she said, maybe I should ask Lama Zopa, So I didn't like this, but I said, okay, come. And very reluctantly I came. And the funny thing happened was that we were late. We were given a time, and this friend of mine and we were given a time, and we came late, and we got a huge scolding from people like Pam, Karuna, Pam. And they said, how could you do this? You've lost your time. And I said, but we didn't know. We were so humiliated, really. And then said, okay, now he's going to teach the course. It was in November, I suppose. And you'll have to wait. So you might as well come into the tent and listen. And then after that, we'll set up another time for you. So when I went in there, into the thing, and we both sat down, I don't know what my friend heard, but all he was saying is sometimes just a look. His discourse was saying that sometimes somebody just says something, or he just gives you a kind of look, or he doesn't look. He doesn't look at you. And your mind becomes on like a forest fire, You're just burning inside and you can't handle it. He was actually just absolutely telling me what my mind was like then. It was just completely struck home. And it was amazing. So then after the thing, we went up again to the little room, and she sat there, and I was just sitting here waiting for this to be over. And he said, I thought he's going to just listen and like later on you divine that, is this a good relationship? Maybe it's not good, or maybe you should start splitting or something. And he looked at her like, almost like a lover, and he said, how's your friend? And I'm shocked. And I think, that man. And he says, how's your friend? And it's important to you. And she was completely melting over there saying, it's very important to me. And I was just being pragmatic and practical and saying, Westerners don't have serious marriages sometimes. Maybe don't have kids and things like that, Well, what's the problem, Just separate. But he saw what she was going through, which I as a friend couldn't see. And And the way he spoke to her like this, and her face, I was watching this interaction, you know. She was not Buddhist. She was just trying to get some kind of divination, you know. And so I saw that, and I saw him, and I didn't actually, what I saw, I didn't feel then. But when we came down the hill, and she took her car and she left, and I went into my house. I was all alone in those days. My husband was somewhere else. And something really hit me, you know. I just got like, I don't know what hit me.
Very nice.
But I said, I know what I have to do in my life, you know. I've seen what I have to do. When
Yeah.
I can't even repeat it now. So then I called Karuna, and then he came down and he said, you mean the window cracked? I said, yeah. So then he gave a lot of advice, and that was it. I wasn't able to formulate. I probably could now, after all these Nalanda Master's Course teachings, you know. But at that time, I just saw him as not there. He's an apparition. He just came here, and he's manifested himself for us. And in his chest area, he was just a light. And this light was emanating towards my friend. I just saw a completely different aspect, you know, that from what I'd seen before. The humble, you know, servant of his guru.
Yep.
So this was, I remember
Beautiful.
that moment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I think it might be cake time, perhaps.
She's bringing it down.
She's bringing it down. And what I also thought we'd do is, why don't we stop there? But I would like to dedicate before we do the cake, and we're going to read some of the prayers for Rinpoche's swift return.
Yeah.
We could go on and on with stories. I mean, that's pretty evident. But also, I don't want it to get too late for people. So, but what I'd like to do is thank you so much for joining. And I would like to dedicate something. We had a motivation in the beginning. May we dedicate. So we're investing whatever positive energy or merit, also called merit, that we have created from whatever positive things you've done today, and certainly from this time together right now. And may we invest it in Rinpoche coming back as quickly as possible in the most optimum rebirth. And the best way to resume his role as the spiritual director of the FPMT, to guide all these numerous students like that in the best way. And may it also help wake up our own practices. Thank you so much. To wake up our own practices to help us move along this path to Buddhahood, so we can unlimitedly manifest, to unlimitedly benefit all living beings. I'd also like to dedicate to peace in all world systems right now, for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'd like to dedicate for all those all over the planet who need additional healing. May they receive it immediately and completely. And for all those who have recently passed away, may they take a good rebirth to reach that place where they're unlimited to benefit all living beings. And we're going to read a prayer for the swift return. Yeah, that's great. Sure. So for those of you online, we're going to share the prayers for the swift return. Oh, it's a nice picture of Rinpoche. Looks like Laudo in the back, but somewhere.
This is in Tsum Valley.
Tsum Valley. Oh. Yeah, it looks kind of very a late photo. Oh, lovely. Wow. And try to really think about the words that we're saying as well. and then it'll follow what the people have here as well. Yep. So we're going to start on page 5. This is the prayer from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make requests. How do I go to the next page? Okay. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from mother living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. We have the prayer from Jado Rinpoche, page 9. Patient in bearing the hardships of spreading the teachings of the Muni in general, and the teaching of the victorious Jamgon Tsongkhapa in hundreds of directions, Lord of Dharma holding the 3 vows and wearing saffron robes, please quickly return as the glory of the peerless teachings. You held the teachings of explanation and practice with great asceticism, unable to bear that transmigratory beings are confused by the darkness of suffering. Through your great loving kindness, you skillfully led them to happiness. Unparalleled Son of the teachings, please return quickly. Beautified by the ornament of supreme patience and increasing the practice of the supreme authentic teachings of the victorious one through listening, reflection, and meditation, guide of all transmigratory beings along the perfect path, true and perfect pure Guru, please return quickly. And then we'll go to Khandrola, a lamenting wail, and that is on page 12. A lamenting wail, supplication for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Guru, think of me. Guru, consider me. Most gracious Root Guru, care for me. Most gracious Root Guru, do not deprive us of your compassionate refuge. Listen and consider this heartfelt prayer made by a tormented disciple. Guru, embodiment of the Buddhas of the 3 times, please bless me. You may rest in all-pervading great bliss, equipoised within the dhatu of unimpeded luminosity. Yet the playful dance of your loving compassion emanates in myriad ways. The time has come for the return of the swift appearance of your magical wisdom, the Rupakaya, and for you to care for us once again with your affectionate compassion. Arise, arise, arise from the Dharmakaya. I invoke you, I call upon you. I implore you on behalf of all beings, do not rest in Kichar or other pure realms, rather to benefit the Buddha's teachings, and all living beings swiftly return to this southern continent to spread the Buddha Dharma of study and realization. Quickly return to guide us poor wretched beings, such as the desperate cry of us, your disciples. Return so that we may actually behold your presence and receive the blessings of your body, speech, and mind. All violations, errors, mistakes, and broken samaya that we have made in relation to your body, speech, mind, and spontaneous activity, through our being confused and conceiving things in erroneous ways, we confess within the luminous emptiness of your 3 kayas. Of everything auspicious, the supreme auspiciousness, may there be the auspiciousness of emptiness and compassion. May there be the auspiciousness of a timely meeting between master and disciples. Through the force of the truth of unchanging suchness, may the unmistaken incarnation return quickly. This lament was made by me, a Dakini with pure faith and samaya, her eyes filled with tears of sorrow. May these wishes of a beggar woman be fulfilled through the blessings of the deities of the three roots, perception, its object, and the perceiver all dissolve within the expanse, the blissful clarity of suchness. Ah. Oh, Gewadi no dudag lama sange jugurne jua chigyamalup di salago parsho. John Chus and children poje make panam ke gurche ke panyam pame payam gane kandu pelwarsho. O gamri ramwe kowe shinkam der pendang dewa malu chongwe ne chenre sigwang tenjing gacho sharpe si te bardu tengyur chi. Thank you so much. I know this was a very short evening, and I want to thank all of you online and everyone for coming in person, for your wonderful attention. And I hope it's helpful as just a little taste of self-compassion techniques, but mainly that some kindness to yourself helps us to be kind to others. And Lama Yeshe used to say, be gentle with yourself, and then you'll be gentle with all others. So I think it's really an important lesson for us to know. And I know recently I had the good fortune in Dharamsala, I was able to see many different holy beings and saw Jetsoma Tenzin Palmo, the English nun, who's been recognized by the Tibetans as a very high realized being. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said she's realized bodhicitta, and she's an old friend and she's really extraordinary. And we were talking about how non-Himalayan people, like not the Tibetans or the Sherpas, but other people like us that are very, very hard on ourselves. And she said, it's just kind of like, I call it the plague of our Western civilization. And we're not all Westerners here, but still, I think Delhi can be somewhat similar. And she was just saying people are so hard. So that beginning starts with the gentleness to ourselves. Like we have to start with some care and love towards ourselves. It's so important. So again, within balance, with that broader motivation can be really helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to Tushita for hosting me again, and hope we can meet again in the future.
Thank you so much, Venerable Amy.
Much.
Thank you so much on behalf of Tushita and everyone here, everyone online, and everyone who will watch later on YouTube. Thank you so much. I hope we can all implement all these great tools that you gave us as a self-compassion. And thank you so much for the very moving stories you shared about Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And please come back again and again to Tushita whenever you are coming through Delhi.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And please accept this offering on our behalf.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I hope we all meet again. Thank you for joining. And for those of you in person, you get some cake. So maybe we can, in Delhi, you sing happy birthday? Like the happy, so maybe we can join and have a little happy birthday Rinpoche. Wherever you are, Rinpoche's here. You know, I feel Rinpoche all around like that, and all these images and all of our centers. I think the feeling, the spirit, you know, is there. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rinpoche. Happy birthday to you. And may we soon be celebrating with maybe a wonderful child to appear that could be recognized hopefully soon, and be able to celebrate many, many happy, healthy birthdays with Rinpoche in the future. Thank you so much. For those of you online, thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Venerable Amy.